Hello, I'm Jerry Crosby, and I'm here with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Chico Stake Life Sketches. And I'm happy to be introducing Brad Ogden, who's a friend of mine, into our podcast today. Good to have you with us, Brad.
It's good to be here.
It is good for you to be here. So tell us a little bit about growing up in Sevier County, Utah, in Richfield. What was that like for you to be in a multi-generational city like that where you had so many family roots?
I think it was somewhat unusual at least for people today. Mm-hmm. I was born in Richfield, but sort of grew up in Price until I was about a sophomore in high school. After which both my mother and father are from Richfield. They wanted to get back, so we moved to Richfield. But it was there that my grandparents were born there, both sets, and died there. My great-grandparents were there. I even have great-great-grandparents, all but maybe 2 sets, that are buried in that valley. So there's a lot of family there. It's maybe bigger than Gridley somewhat, but mostly an agricultural community with a lot of dentists.
You said that your dad worked for the telephone company, and that's what had you guys moving around a bit?
Yeah, he was the office supervisor in Price, but as soon as an opening came up in Richfield, they bolted. So they wanted to be.
So then as a teenager, you're moving back to Richfield, which is your family seat, and yet you didn't grow up there. What was that like, kind of coming back home and yet still being an outsider?
Well, it was tough because I was, at the time, the sophomore class president. So I was only halfway through the year, and then my dad says, "Oh, we're leaving." And so that was kind of tough to leave Price and go back to Richfield, even though I had some friends there, a first cousin that I was close to, and others. But it was being introduced to a new community really is kind of an interesting experience, especially when you're in high school.
And what year were you in high school at that time? You were a sophomore.
I'd had half a year of driver's ed in Price, the other half in Richfield, and they did it completely differently. So I just ignored it all and drove like I wanted.
And got your license anyhow.
Yeah.
Now, when I was in Utah as a kid, half the kids were driving cars without licenses anyhow.
Half the kids are driving four-wheelers, aren't they?
Yep, that's right. So as you were growing up, how did your parents support you spiritually?
Neither of my parents were active in the church, nor were my grandparents. I mean, they were supportive, but certain word of wisdom issues, kind of kept them out of the church. But they're very supportive, especially of my younger brother and myself. There are 4 kids in the family. And Dad every Sunday would get up and he'd have our shoes shined on the table, ready to go to church. It was just the expected thing. If we had a talk, they would usually be there to listen to us. But, my dad could never speak in church. In fact, if he was asked to give the prayer at a funeral, I'd have to write out the prayer for him on a 5x7 card so he could read it.
So did he have a real fear of that?
He just had no experience with it, so it was kind of tough for him. But it was also difficult because my father was very popular in school. He was a great football player and basketball player, and I was a klutz. I didn't grow until much later in high school, and so I loved basketball, but when you're only 5'7" and 105 pounds, you get knocked around a lot.
You would, yes, indeed. And was basketball big in Richfield, I would assume?
Yeah, basketball is big all through those little communities in southern Utah. Well, all through Utah.
Yep, that is true. Tell us about your mission in Australia.
I didn't really ever think much about going on a mission. It wasn't something that, obviously, we talked about at home at family home meeting because we didn't have family home meeting. But, when we graduated from high school, I went to BYU for a year. And that was a great event for me in my life. I had a scholarship to go to southern Utah State, Cedar City, and had my housing down there and everything. And then BYU sent a letter and said, "We'll give you some money, too, if you'll come to BYU." So I thought about it and then opted to go north. And that made all the difference. It's these little pivotal points in your life that make a lot of difference. The guys that I would have roomed with in Cedar City, I don't think they were quite so fortunate spiritually. So then my friends all left, and I was the lone holdout there after that first year, and I had all their girlfriends were there. There was like 8 girls and me, and I thought, this isn't so bad.
Now, were those 8 girlfriends, or were those 8 girls who were friends?
They were 8. Well, I don't have a picture of me with the 8, and I thought, but no, I wasn't a girlfriend with any of them. But I left. I got a call to Australia, the Australia West Mission. In fact, they call it the Great Australia West Mission.
Well, of course, it would be great if you were there. How did your parents feel about that?
They were supportive.
Did they help support you financially?
Yeah, they did. I had some money, and they supported me financially. My mother worked at the floral shop, and I think they made more sacrifices than I was aware of when I was out there.
Our parents often do.
I had a girlfriend that waited for me the whole time, and then got married as soon as I got back. So that was fine. No, that mission was a great experience for me. It really spiritually solidified my testimony and my understanding of gospel principles. That all comes from having the perfect mission president, and he was very good.
So who was your mission president?
It was, to start with, Richard J. Marshall. He was an advertising executive in Salt Lake City. And he said this, he said, serve a great mission, get a great wife. He said, keep that in mind. And I think he told the truth.
It worked for you.
That he was really a good mission president.
Do you have any particular memories of a convert or a story from your mission that really helped to solidify your testimony?
You know, I do. Fasting was a big part of that. And you know what? There's places in Australia that are even hotter than Chico. And I broke my arm playing basketball and had this cast on my arm, and it was sweltering hot. I'd go in the supermarket and just put it in the cold freezer there just to cool off. But we were fasting for a convert and made the difference. We got the word that he had fallen down in a coma or something. He was in the hospital. And we gave him a blessing, and boy, he joined the church, and he was a great convert, but a lot more success perhaps than they have today in some of these countries. Mm-hmm. People loved us. They loved Americans. The Yanks saved us from the Japanese, they'd say. Come in and we could drink water, whatever. I mean, they didn't always have an interest in the church, but they were appreciative of what our country did for them during the war.
So very friendly and welcoming people at that time.
And Aussies are kind of that way in general.
Uh-huh.
You know, when I got there, it took several months to really learn the language.
I was going to say, did you come back with any Aussie phrases that you still use?
Oh, man. She's right, mate. You know, but they have different terms for things.
Mm-hmm.
And you adjusted after a while. What a great place. And our mission was equivalent to half the United States in land mass, so it was a big mission.
Right. So was it in the Outback area in part?
Yeah. Up in the northern part in Darwin was a very outbacky place. Mm-hmm. Great experiences there. Yeah.
So you get back from your mission.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to BYU.
Right, resume my education.
Which was, of course, the right place to be because that's where you met Terry.
That's where I met Terry. But I studied accounting because my grandmother told me, she said, hey, be an accountant. All you need is paper and a pencil. You can make a living. My grandma didn't really see computers on the horizon, did she? But
none of us did, man.
Yeah, it was a good major, and I enjoyed the instruction. And then met my wife it was the last semester we got married, so that I now can tell my kids how difficult it was to be married and still go to school. One semester. And then we moved to Twin Falls, accepted a position there.
Wait, slow down a bit.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about your courtship with Terry, and how did you guys meet, and how did that happen?
Well, we were picking cherries at the church farm, and I was by the branch president, says, who is that girl? Anyway, I kind of like her. He said, He said, she is waiting for a missionary. And he's a football player. So you better just keep your distance. I said, okay. But then, a couple of days later, they had a grease fire in their apartment, and I was in the parking lot when they evacuated. So all those girls had about 10 seconds to grab their most valuable possession. And Terry came out with her book of remembrance. I thought, well, that's a good test. I like her. So we dated and subsequently got married.
And that football player just became history.
I don't know what happened to him.
History.
Yeah.
So you're married. You already told us you got married your last semester during school. What was the road that brought you to Chico?
Well, we lived in Twin Falls, and we'd been there for 2 years. And it took a day to get to Chico to visit family. It took a day to get to Richfield. So any kind of trip blew 2 days just in travel. And I said, this isn't working well. So actually, Luther McLaughlin was instrumental in asking me to interview with them, the big firm here in town. So I did, and after that interview, they offered me a job. And I said, well, no, I don't think so. No thanks. I went back to Twin Falls, and a couple months later, I had a bad day. They happen. So I called them up, and I said, is that job still open? And they said, you bet, come on. So we packed all of our living belongings, including our car, in the back of a U-Haul truck.
You put the car in the U-Haul truck?
You put the car in first, and then you pack everything around it.
Interesting.
A little Dodge Colt. So we made that trip on the 4th of July in the year 1980. We had Melinda, was our oldest, and traveled all the way to California. I said, I'm not used to driving these big trucks, so let's not go through any cities. We got to Yuba City. I said, let's just go around. She didn't really know directions well. We ended up going right through the middle of town, driving this thing. But we made it, unloaded, and the job brought us here, but I thought it would be good to be closer to family. I wanted that family experience for my own kids. And Keith and Furl were a great example.
Who are the Humphreys?
The Humphreys.
So
yes,
your in-laws, Keith and Furl Humphreys, just welcomed you in, and did you get along with them well?
Well, they twisted our arm a little bit, too, to come.
I'm sure they did.
We got along very well. They were very good to us and supportive. Oh, and a great example of members of the church. So that was fun, coming here and being closer to family. And Terry had a younger brother and a younger sister, too. But she had no cousins here. I mean, that was the extent of their generational family, was Grandma and Grandpa. But Keith's folks moved here then, later on, for a few years at least. So you know what? Now I can say my grandchildren that live here in town are 5th generation Chico Steak members.
That's true.
I don't know how many 5th generations there are, but that's pretty impressive.
And you had some of your children who stayed here in the area.
One of our, Devin, stayed here.
And he's in his grandparents' home.
Yeah, yep. We thought that he just loved that home. He was always helping Grandpa over there, and so when we were dividing things up, we insisted they take the home.
And that's
we
wonderful.
We didn't have to talk them into it.
Yeah, that's wonderful to be able to keep it in the family.
It is. And that's what the Humphreys wanted. They wanted it to be a family home. Actually, when they were called on their mission, he was the mission president in southern Utah. It's kind of funny, but when they were called, we then had to move out to their house to take care of things. So 3 years in that house on 2 acres was enough for me. You don't know how many weeds can grow on 2 acres.
I do.
I was happy to get back into our own home.
So Devin's not your only child. You had 5 children.
As I mentioned, our oldest was Melinda, or is Melinda, who lives in Seattle. She has three girls and a boy. Her oldest just graduated from high school. Kristen is next. She lives in Lehigh. She, as a matter of fact, has 3 girls and a boy. Her oldest is probably about 12. And then Devin is here. Did I say Devin has 3 girls and a boy?
I see a pattern here.
Yeah, we have a pattern, all right. And then Nathan is our 4th child. He lives also not far from Kristen, actually in Highland there. He was just married 2 years ago. We about gave up hope, but he finally got married, and they hope to have a family. Then our youngest, Emily, has just moved from Arizona where she was teaching, and now she lives up there close to her brother and sister. She loves it. She teaches 4th grade at Pleasant Grove.
Emily's a wonderful girl.
She is.
All your kids are. I really quite enjoy them. They're wonderful people.
To me, family is very important. I remember as a missionary, we had this film strip called Father, Consider Your Ways. That's what we had. We packed a projector on the back of the bike, and we had these film strips. And that was my favorite. I would show that whenever I could. And I thought, that's what I want to be. I want to be the father that plays a role with his kids. And I've tried hard to do that. Now, having said that, my wife's probably the key ingredient. She really is. And so they've really turned out pretty darn good. I'm very happy with them.
Any particular family traditions or adventures that you quite enjoyed with your children?
There were many. But I'll tell you, when they were in high school, Melinda, that's the oldest, and her friends talked her into going out and running cross country at PV. So she did. Cross country is not an easy sport. After 2 weeks, they had all dropped out, and Melinda was the only one there out of her group. So she continued to run. She liked it. And then her sister followed suit. Kristen also ran, and then Devin did, and Nathan did, and Emily did. They all ran at Pleasant Valley High School. Kristen and Nate both went on to BYU and ran there, and so that was a good experience, financed their education.
So say you've got to be good if you're going to become a collegial runner.
Oh, it's a different world, I'll tell you. Kristen started at Rick's College at the time, and at the beginning of the year, they had one tryout. They ran, I don't know how many laps around the field, and the first 5 were on the team, the rest can go home. That was really tough. So we're taking her to school. We have to stop at every little town throughout Nevada on our way up to Rexburg so she can run the park, getting acclimated to the higher elevation. Which I don't think did much good, but she qualified. That was a good experience because that coach there was very good. When they went on trips, they dressed up. The boys had suits, the girls had dresses. They carried their scriptures with them. And he would go on, to eat, he'd go in the grocery store and buy bananas or whatever. And it was a solid experience for her for those 2 years. Then she goes on to BYU. The coach meets her on Sunday night and says, hey, let's go out to Sizzler. And, you're injured there, and they put you on the steroids or whatever. It's very competitive. So, but she did well, and she's developed lifelong friends there. Nate also, following her, had the same experience. They're always getting injured. That's a tough sport, that track, but they did well.
Well, that's good.
They did well, and they continue to run, so they're in very good shape, and they'll probably need a lot of knee replacement somewhere down the road, but they do.
Look, I didn't run, and I need knee replacements too, so there you are. So now that they're all gone, what are you doing to hold the family together?
We try every time we can. Every other year, usually, we get the other family can have that odd year, but it's Terry. She plans it. We go somewhere, rent one of these big, huge houses. This last year we went to Bear Lake, and everybody, all the families could be under the same roof, which is really nice.
That's great.
And we'd never been to Bear Lake, so that was fun. But we also did things together when they were growing up. We had 2 major events that stick in my mind. The first was an expedition to Nauvoo. I came home from work once, and Terry said, hey, what do you think about applying for participation in the Nauvoo pageant? I said, well, I have never, ever thought of that. They have a Nauvoo pageant. And I said, oh, yeah. And then I thought, okay, I'll give my blessing to this because I know we'll never get accepted. They don't take people from California. They take people from Wisconsin and Illinois and Indiana. The rest of us are outlanders. And sure enough, they rejected us. And then about 2 weeks before the pageant, the guy calls and says, hey, you guys still interested? Because we've had some dropouts and we need you. So we packed our bags and we went to Nauvoo. Took 2 days, at least, as I remember, 2 cars, traveling all the way to Nauvoo to be in that pageant. That was a good experience. Devin said, I'm not going.
So you took all the kids?
All the kids, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Our oldest was in high school, so all the kids went. Devin didn't want to go. I said, Devin, I will tie you up in duct tape. You know what duct tape is? And put you in the back, and you'll go. So, in other words, you have no free agency here. And he rebelled, but we went, and he sulked the whole time until we got to Wyoming. And then he saw the fireworks stands and perked right up. This isn't so bad after all. And it was kind of a miracle because we get to Nauvoo and we're introduced to a family that the father and the sons do nothing but restore old Mustang cars, which was his passion. So he immediately fell in love with that family, including probably an attractive young lady that was there too. That was good.
And
then,
what did your family play in the Nauvoo pageant?
I don't know. We were a family, we were a family, and you have to dance, you have to sing, you have to do things that I really don't do well. So during one of the practices, the director said, Brother Ogden, he said, you're a little taller, so why don't you get in the back behind everybody there? That would be a good place for you. Yeah, right. So that's where I was.
And you were perfectly comfortable in the back.
I was fine. I can't dance, so that worked out well. It's funny, Devin later on gets his mission call to that same mission. I can't remember what they had. It's the Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska mission.
So it sounds like God sort of duct taped him as well.
I think so.
And said, you got to go.
If anybody needed duct tape, it was him. Probably still does. But that was a good experience for our family. And it was 3 weeks away from home, too. It was a long time. And the weather in Illinois was something we had never experienced. We saw fireflies for the very first time.
Yes.
And it's so hot and humid there by the Mississippi River. But that was good to explore and get acquainted with the area. I loved it.
That's wonderful.
The other experience we had was going to Philmont as a family there. We had the opportunity to go there on a church-related thing, and they had classes that I went to because of my calling, and the kids then, they sent them all off on hikes, different places for the week. And that was good.
Well, and you've always really interested me because, as you know, I grew up with the Humphreys as kind of a second family to me. And so I grew up very close to Terry and Linda and Greg, the kids. But you kind of came into Chico and took over. You became the roving solution man here.
I don't know about that.
You totally did. And I just think that's wonderful that you came into kind of this new community and really became central to what was happening. How did that kind of happen for you?
Well, I think I just kind of grew into it. First of all, we were located in the central ward, I think, of the whole stake here. I was called to be the bishop when I was 35. I knew nothing. I was dumb as a brick. And I had in my ward Clark Davis and, Keith Humphreys was there. Their offices were right there, plus Bob Standing. We had all these guys that had a lot of experience. It was hard to really make a mistake. And so I kind of learned that way, and I don't like to ask questions. I like to listen. Guys like Jim Watts taught me a lot. Jim knew all about the building of the stake center, where the sewer lines run, just all that obscure information. That was, I don't know, it just sort of, I like that.
So if you became a bishop at 35, your children must have still been pretty young. You're working hard. How did you manage juggling all that?
Well, not only that, I had a 90-year-old great aunt who had no children. We were her closest relatives in paradise, Eva Smith. She was a great blessing to our life, but I had to kind of look after her, too. It was kind of a challenging time. Once I went up there, couldn't hear worth beans. I knock on the door, nobody. And I just panic after a while, so I take the hinges off the door, take the whole door away, I go in there, and she's just snoring away in her easy chair. But she told me stories about her father, who would be my great-grandfather, that we recorded, and other things. She's a real blessing. But, yeah, I think I had a good wife, strong wife. She sort of held everything together while we did this other stuff. We had a good ward, too. Yeah. You couldn't have asked for a better ward. Lauren Standing, Linda Davis, they were all, Cheryl Allen,
All central people in my childhood, yep.
You could have put a monkey in there as the bishop and he would have been fine.
That's good to know. And was your aunt a part of your real passion for family history? Did she help plant that seed? Or did you kind of have that from childhood?
I had that going forward. When I moved to Richfield, I had 2 first cousins in the same class I was in. Mm-hmm. I had 3 or 4 or 5 second cousins. And I didn't really put all this together till later, but the fabric of our family just was all through that community, all through the valley. And so, I learned about the extended family that many people don't have. I learned about the history and the graveyard. The cemetery was cool. We lived a block from the cemetery. When we bought the house, my grandfather says, "Oh, this is a great place." I says, "Why is that?" He says, "You can watch all the funeral processions right from your front porch. You can count the cars. You know who died and how many people supported them." So, it was just part of this multicultural thing that I thought was very important to me. So, I kind of came away with more knowledge. And then to have Eva up here, whom I didn't know before, and she shared a lot.
And you said that you guys would go and decorate
Oh, yeah.
the grave sites?
Yeah, when I said to my wife on Memorial Day, "Let's go decorate graves," she looked at me and says, "Are you crazy? Why would we decorate graves?" She was thinking, crepe paper and bows. But, if you're from these rural areas of Utah, on Memorial Day, every grave has flowers, baskets, flags. They're just beautiful sights. They really are. And I, as a young man, would go with my grandfather when I was in high school. Every one of our extended family, had a basket, wicker basket, flowers. And I'd have to help him put them on each grave and listen to him. And he'd tell me the stories about this person, that person. And there was a lot of them there. And I couldn't wait to get rid of that job so I could go drag Maine. But, a lot of that stuck with me. He was a barber. He knew everybody in town. My other grandfather was a rancher. So I kind of had a diversity of experiences there that was, I think, really important to my development. So I love family history. I love what makes families tick. I love the interaction, the stories, why things have happened.
You've even written some biographies for your family, yes?
Oh, yeah, I've had fun doing that. I'm not trained in the art of literature, but I've done my best. Read a couple of books. But I've done 4 or 5. One of them was published on a prominent church history blog. And, I explored, my great-grandfather he had 2 wives, so they eventually threw him in the penitentiary for plural marriage. Mm. My other great-grandfather was in there at the same time for the same thing.
Yeah, my grandfather ran away.
Your grandfather ran away?
He left the country.
So I often wondered, how they interacted together and if they knew one another, if they knew someday their posterity would be of the same brand. But, I learned a lot about different attributes of the family. At the one side of the family, they liked alcohol quite a bit. They made a lot of their own during the Prohibition. And I had one great-grandfather that my mother did not like him. He was a useless drunk. She didn't. And her sisters were the same way. I couldn't find hardly anybody that had a good word to say to him, but maybe a couple of people. I thought, why is that? I mean, he was bad. He lost the farm almost because of gambling in a poker game. He hit a guy and killed him out on a snowy road one day. I mean, he was not temple-worthy. But anyway, I thought, I wonder what made him that way. And as I studied the history, I find that his third child was a boy, finally. He had 2 girls and then this boy. And he really, really loved this little guy. And they're out in the field, harrowing the field. Harrows have these rakes.
Right.
I don't know what happened. The kid fell off the tractor, and one of those tines went right through his chest. And Parley jumps off there and grabs him and runs to the house. But there's nothing you could do. He died in his arms. And I thought, could I even survive something like that? Knowing I was probably responsible for it and so on. And I think that probably really pushed him over the edge. And in understanding why he might have been like he was, I had a lot more compassion for him.
Well, and isn't it lovely to know our Savior has that kind of knowledge and compassion?
Really, yeah.
I mean, that's what grace is for.
It is. It is. And so I kind of wrote that story, and that was fun to sort of explore the family. And just some interesting stories. My one great-grandfather that was in the penitentiary said they could write their name on the bunk underneath them by pushing on the bed bugs that were up there and smashing them. So it was that bad.
That's awful.
That bad in there. So,
oh my goodness.
But they survived fine and did all right. But I have a lot of family history that way.
So you have this wonderful wife, Terry, And I understand that there's a particular adventure where the two of you got lost. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yes, I can tell you about that because it was a very interesting experience. And I wouldn't say we were lost, but we were, like Jim Bridger, a mite bewildered for quite a while. But this is how it unfolds.
So where were you at?
We were up in the High Lakes, and we got my son Nate and his buddy and Terry and I, and we're going fishing up there. Had a great time fishing, and then we start out, and it's about dusk. But, you know, I have trifocals, and the frame broke on the side. So the glasses are wobbling around. Terry and I go first. We leave them in there to fish. And I'm having trouble following the trail. My wife has no idea where she's going. And I took a wrong turn. Easy to do. It's dark. I can't see straight. And then we walked for, I don't know for how long we walked, and I looked around and I said, I don't recognize where we're at all.
How far was the fishing from your actual base camp to begin with before you got lost?
It was from where we parked the truck, probably 4 or 5 miles, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so we were about 2 miles from the lake when I zigged when I should have zagged. So we go down there, and it's pitch black, and we're down there quite a ways. And I don't know north from south. I can't figure out where we're at.
No flashlight?
Well, you know, we weren't prepared for that. We didn't have a flashlight, didn't have a compass, didn't even have a match. Had a fishing pole and a pair of swimming trunks that I was, put on when I fished, and my waders. So we're stuck there. I said, we better not go anywhere else. Let's have a prayer, and let's just bed down for the night. And then when it gets light, we'll be able to find our way out.
Okay, you got to stop and tell us exactly what you were wearing. So you have swim trunks?
Well, no, I wasn't wearing them. They were in
waders?
my backpack, the waders and the swim trunks, and had,
And shorts and a shirt.
Yeah, not much.
Terry, the same? No jackets?
Yeah, we're not. It's a 4th of July, by the way, the height of summer. So why do you need anything warm? Well, it gets really cold up there. I'll tell you that.
Yes, it does at night.
And I thought, where's the best place to be? So we got kind of down by the stream that we could hear, and which was a mistake because, as it turned out, people were looking for us at night hollering, but we couldn't hear anything because of the water noise. So we're down there, and Terry says, I'm sure the kids will come looking for us. I said, the kids won't even know we're gone until the milk gets sour in the refrigerator, and they look around and say, what's going on here? But I was wrong. They had panicked. They had called Grandpa and Devin. They were all up there in the parking lot and running up and down the trail looking for where in the world we could be. And we were huddled under some tree by the stream just trying to stay warm. It really got cold up there. So we'll be all right in the morning. And so they were panicky. We were just trying to sleep. I don't know if we got any sleep, but I wake up in the morning, and that was a Saturday, so it's wake up and it's Sunday. And I had a can of soda in my pack, so I popped it because we needed something to drink. My wife grabbed it and threw it in the stream. She said, it's fast Sunday.
Now, how did you stay warm during that night? Because I hear that there are waiter stories as part of this.
Well, there's people that have kind of made it up. Not very funny. People, you have to earn your right to make fun of us. So anyway, we just did the best we could with what we had. But it was cold. So we get up the next morning
and she really did throw away
she
your
threw that
soda pop.
Clear, I could not get it. It was fast Sunday. So we're going to, and I'm dehydrated to boot, I'm watching that can float down the river. And, oh, brother. And I said, I think we need to go that way. And she says, no, I think we need to go that way. And so sometimes women have their way of thinking they know what they're doing. And to this day, I won't tell you who was right and who was wrong. But we wandered around there. We're on a trail, and I see all this bear scat. I'm seeing bear scat all over. Big piles of bear scat. And we're in Plumas County. Mm-hmm. They have more bears per capita than any place in Canada and California. So, but I don't say anything to her. I just try to keep things light. And I see airplanes overhead once, so I think, oh, it's a search party. Well, it wasn't any search party. So sometime in the afternoon, the Plumas County Search and Rescue finds us. They said, oh, this is a trail up. I said, good. Okay, thanks, guys. We're on our way. No, just stay right with us. They walked us all the way up there.
They were not going to trust you on your own after all their effort.
They didn't know we were competent people. Eagle Scout, But anyway, we get up there to the parking lot, and there may be 20 people that have skipped church just to find us. And they all started clapping, you know. And I really got emotional. I thought there's people, you know, there were people that really cared about us. Jerry Wright, Lance Wright, and others. And they're up here. As dumb as I am to get lost, they were there. They were there for us. And then we finally get home. I take a shower, and I get out of the shower, and my wife's on the phone talking, answering questions. I said, "Who is it?" "It's the Enterprise record." I said, oh no. So they get the whole story.
So you end up in the local newspaper. You have the park rangers out there. People leave church on Fast Sunday.
On Fast Sunday. And
to come and find you.
Yeah, don't get lost on Fast Sunday because they announce it in church and then people start doing a lot of praying for you, you know, which is touching, but I don't like to be the center of attention.
Especially not after getting lost as an Eagle Scout.
So here it is, 15 years later. Guy at the temple yesterday comes up and says, "Oh, Brad, how are you? You been lost lately?" Story will never die. But that's it. It's an interesting experience. Yeah.
It is a good story.
You know, but I think sometimes you get lost spiritually in life. Sometimes you don't know which direction to go. And you might not be very far from help. And what keeps us from really asking for help? So, you know, it's probably there's no shame in getting lost. The shame is in not seeking help if you can get it.
And how many friends we have that will come help us, whether we're
It blew me
physically or
away.
spiritually
Blew
lost.
me away how many friends
Yep.
we had that were worried about us.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was touching.
that's nice.
Yeah, okay. So that's the last we'll hear of that story, huh?
I don't think so.
Okay, thanks for letting me clear the air.
All right. So we're coming to the end, and I ask everybody the same question at the end. If you could leave one message with our viewers, what message would you want to leave?
I'd like to leave the same message that I would leave with my children, and that is that family is important. Your relationships with your family are important. I have families where they don't talk to one another. I know mothers, they don't even know where some of their kids are, and that breaks my heart. And so I do everything I can to help my kids have a great relationship with one another and their own children, and it's working so far. Sure helps to have a companion that wants the same thing, but family, really, it's all about family. You know, I really don't have any desire other than do things with them and share in their experience and teach them things that they probably ignore anyway. But I think those family relationships are eternal and vital and very, very important.
Amen. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and a little bit about your life with us today.
You're welcome. Good to be here.